What's up, y'all? It's Carla, aka Sila the Poet. How y'all doing? I know it's been a while. So tonight I'm gonna talk about the Carmelo Anthony verdict. I am disappointed. I am sad about that verdict. I don't believe it was a just verdict. I don't believe that it was a righteous verdict. There are other people and other races that have walked when the homicide victim, has been black. And I want to discuss some of the reasons why unjust verdicts like this happen, which is one of the main reasons why I decided against being a lawyer. I realize how racist and how unequal and how corrupt our justice system is. Right now, when we have a mainly Trump led conservative Supreme Court that basically overturned the use of race and the use of ICE being able to target people. These are the type of times that we're living in. So we're living in times of racial injustice. But let's talk about some of the ways that these unjust verdicts happen. So during a trial, there has to be a jury that is selected. The way that the jury is selected is they usually do, what do you call that? They usually do I think, questionnaire. They send questionnaires out. They will go by the voting rolls or the motor vehicle rolls, the motor vehicle records in a county, right? To be able to look for potential jurors. Now, if that county happens to be mainly an all-white vicinity, or if that county, is a all-black vicinity or whatever, then the next part of jury selection comes voir dire. Voir dire is basically a questioning of each potential juror to find out their background, their education, their profession, their family life, prior experiences that might prevent them from being impartial, and how familiar they are with the case, right? And see if they have preconceived notions about the subject matter in the case, right? So what ends up happening is once these questions are asked and they find out a little bit about these jurors, they begin something called striking jurors, which means removing potential jurors out of the jury pool. Okay? One reason they do it is called the challenge for cause. And an attorney can ask a judge to strike a juror if they can specify to a judge a valid reason why they don't think this person can be fair or impartial, right? Okay? Or they may have an inability to remain neutral. Then there are the peremptory challenges. This allows attorneys to strike jurors without providing a reason. Okay? Now, there was a case, Belton versus Kentucky, where you're supposed to not use race, right? During peremptory challenges, you are not supposed to use those challenges to remove people of a certain race, ethnicity, or gender, but it is still widely practiced. Historically, white vicinities use that to remove potential black jurors or potential jurors that were non-white out of being on a jury concerning a case. And there are also other ways to get around that by them providing another reasoning for why they do the peremptory challenges, but behind it, race is the reason why they're removing these people off of the jury. And in the Carmelo Anthony case, from what I understand, one of the attorneys gave a peremptory challenge to strike all the black potential jurors off of that case. And the excuse that they used was that these black people were teachers. And because they were teachers, they wouldn't be able to give a unbiased opinion. But we know good and well that that's not the reason that they strike them. They strike them because they were black. Okay? That's the reason why they got rid of them. And it ended up being an all-white jury. Now, according to statistics, okay, when there is an all-white jury, there's going to be a higher conviction rate for the black defendant. Okay, when there's an all-white jury, there is going to be a higher conviction rate for black defendants. Okay, and that is what some studies have proven. Okay, now the reasoning why unjust verdicts can happen is also, once the jury is selected and the case is going on, there is something called cognitive bias, where juries may only favor evidence that aligns with their pre-existing beliefs and confirmation biases, or they will let the defendant's physical appearance or demeanor sway their judgment, and that is a form of appearance bias. So if this is an all-white jury and the defendant is black and they think he looks suspicious, they are more likely to use their bias in making a decision. Okay? There is also pre-trial publicity and external research. Now, judges usually instruct jurors to not watch the news and to not do individual research, but a lot of jurors still do it. They read the news about the case, or they do independent research, and it ends up prejudicing their points of view and the decision that they're going to make. There's also something called jury nullification. Okay? This is what happens when a jury can return a not guilty verdict even if the prosecution has proven their case, has proven that the defendant has broken the law or hasn't broken the law. Okay, and the reason why they will give a verdict like that is because they believe the underlying law is unjust, the penalty for the defendant is too harsh or not harsh enough, or that the state overstepped its bounds. Okay? Then there's also group dynamics and coercion. So during the jury's deliberations, if there are jurors that believe that the person is guilty while others are saying that they're not guilty, if there are more people saying that they are guilty while the others are saying they are not guilty, they will pressure the other jurors into changing their votes to prevent a hung jury. Okay? Or to prevent it from being deadlocked. So you have other jurors that are trying to sway other jurors' decision making. And lastly, racial and social prejudices. Okay? So despite the processes that are supposed to be designed to prevent discrimination, people will still have implicit and explicit racial and socioeconomic biases. Okay? And it can sway the way that they think. It could sway the way they look at witness credibility. Okay? The severity of the crime and whether or not the defendant is guilty. Okay? There was a study done by New Northwestern University which shows that juries in criminal cases are often reaching incorrect verdicts. Okay? So this injustice that we continue to see with black defendants in these cases is nothing new. Okay? We already know that the system is racist. We already know that the system is biased. And that's the reason why we continue to have verdicts like this. Okay? Sometimes jurors will disregard the law, right, to deliver what they personally believe is a moral outcome. And for people that are white and that are racist or that are biased, what they think matters more than the law, what the actual law, what they think will matter more than actually giving someone a fair chance or a fair trial. Okay? So, unjust verdicts can be caused by biased juries, pools, or a biased judge. Just because someone is a judge does not mean that they are not racist. Just because someone is a judge does not mean that they aren't a part of a white supremacist organization on the law. In history, we had judges down south and even preachers that were a part of the KKK. Okay, and some still are today. And they keep that private, but that doesn't keep them from getting their position. Okay, due to the freedom of speech and all of that. All right. There are also ineffective protections, right? Ineffective protections. Even though there are laws that prevent discrimination, lawyers find loopholes and ways to get around that. Okay? But studies prove that the racial makeup of a jury directly impacts trial outcomes. And when it is an all-white jury, it's usually going to be a high conviction rate if the defendant is a black defendant. Okay? Also, there is the quality of deliberations. Okay? So, in a racially diverse jury, they will discuss the facts more, they will consider wider perspectives, and they are more likely to raise issues of racial profiling and biases. But when you have an all-white jury that may not have any understanding of another culture, okay, or they may have been taught racism in the home or stereotypes about race in the home, they're not going to be able to think any other way. They're not going to be able to think critically. They're just going to think through their bias. Okay? So me as a black mom, I am appalled, I am grieved, I am angry, I am enraged, and I am tired. I, as a black Latina who is raising black son and a black daughter, right? Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latino children, but they are black. I have to worry about my children ending up like Emmett Till. I have to worry about my children, if God forbid they get in trouble with the law. I have to deal with the fact, knowing full well that they may not get justice from a system like this, okay? Where the system treats black and white defendants unequally. You still have George Zimmerman that is out here walking around after he killed Trayvon Martin and used standing his ground. But Carmelo Anthony, who was defending himself against being bullied, was not allowed to use stand your ground. And so this verdict gives the idea that black teenagers or black people are not allowed to defend themselves without being penalized for it. But when a white person like Zimmerman, a white Hispanic person, or a white person like Casey Allison, okay, that ended up murdering Joe Luis Ramirez in a Texas high school in 2022, it's like we are treated differently by the same justice system. And that's not justice. So I am just appalled, I'm upset, and I am tired, but I understand what this system is about. And it is not a justice system. It is a racist and unjust system. And that's all I have to say for now. Peace.